Hi guys, and welcome back to the Library of Alexandria. And today guys, I am finally getting to my review of Bouche Rebecca by Daphne Du Maurier. So, the reason I always say Rebecca, I don't know how to not say it like that. If you've ever seen the One Piece anime, and you've made it all the way to the Dressrosa arc, there's a character named Rebecca, and no one says her name, no one says Rebecca. They always say Rebecca, or the toy soldier does. Anyway, that is probably too much information, but that is why I can't just say Rebecca. I have to say Rebecca. So, guys, Rebecca is a classic that was written in the 30s. I have never read Daphne Du Maurier before, and I really enjoyed my first experience here. I don't normally enjoy reading classics, mostly because the prose is really dense, and it takes forever to get anywhere. An exception for this is Lovecraft, who has that really dense prose, but I just like the way that suspense is built in Lovecraft. And actually, Du Maurier does a lot of that same kind of suspense, dread building in her book, Rebecca, as Lovecraft does in his short story works. So, you're probably familiar with Rebecca the same way I was, in that it has one of the most famous first lines, which is, "Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again." And just from those opening lines, you wonder what is kind of going on. She's very obviously not at Manderley anymore. Manderley being this kind of Downton Abbey-esque English estate. In fact, having watched Downton Abbey, that actually gave me a whole lot of information on what it's like to run those kind of estates, and so that helped a whole lot, having watched that show, with kind of understanding England and those estate runnings of that time. And so Rebecca is not about Rebecca. Our main character is not named Rebecca. In fact, our main character is called Mrs. De Winter after she marries Max De Winter. Here after the first few chapters. She is never given a name, our main character, and the author said that she just couldn't think of one that she liked, so she just didn't give her one. Which is, I guess, fine. But part of the larger reason that we don't have a name for her is, regardless of why the author did it, it still lets us put ourselves in the place of Mrs. De Winter. We can all relate to kind of the experience that she experiences when she goes to Manderley after marrying Max. Now, the only annoying part of that is when in the text it says, "and then I told him my name." It's like, what is your name? Like, if you're telling this guy your name, what is your name? Like, no. Like, don't, just leave those parts out. Because otherwise I'm like, you can literally just tell us what you said. So, our heroine begins the story. We are in Monte Carlo, and she is kind of like a gopher. She's like a personal assistant to this really wealthy woman named Mrs. Van Hopper, who is just kind of like a social climber. She hangs out in Monte Carlo looking for celebrities or like nobles that she can like hobnob with, and she pretends that she met them at like some parties, you know, ages ago. She's like, "Oh, and my nephew, oh, don't you remember? We talked about my nephew for that." She like ingratiates herself with them. She is the worst social climber, and she's just so super annoying. And Mrs. De Winter, or our heroine, is her personal assistant. Well, this time out at Monte Carlo, they meet this really like, mysterious, tall, dark, handsome guy named Max De Winter, who Miss Van Hopper knows is the heir, or not the heir, but the head of the Manderley estate. So he's super important. And, you know, Miss Van Hopper is aware of all these parties that used to be held at Manderley and wonders why he's here. She tries to ingratiate herself with him, and he's not having any of it. He's like, "Get out of my face, you horrible woman." And so our heroine ends up spending a lot of time with Max. She kind of runs into him in the restaurant by themselves, and she eats with him, and then they kind of start hanging out, and then he proposes marriage to her, and she's like, "Well, I can keep being with this lady, which sucks, or I can be literally the wife of like an English noble." And she's like, "Totally. See you, Miss Van Hopper. I'm gonna go with him." Now, the whole time, like, you're just suspicious of Max because she is significantly younger than he is. She's 21 and he's, I think, in his 40s. And he has these like weird, like, mood swings where he drives her up to the hill and is just like staring out and like has, I don't know, it's like kind of like he blacks out and is just acting all creepy, and you're afraid from the get-go, like, are you doing the right thing, lady? Like, are you going with, I guess you're going with him. And so I said this in my wrap-up, that this whole book reminds me of kind of like a creepy Downton Abbey, because much of the action takes place at Manderley. And really from the second Mrs. De Winter arrives in Manderley, everything kind of changes. Max becomes really distant and doesn't really talk to her or want to spend all that much time with her. The housekeeper, Mrs. Danvers, is like some weird, like, she's like she feels like an evil Mrs. O'Brien from Downton Abbey. Where she just very clearly was really close to Max's ex-wife, Rebecca. And that is where the title Rebecca comes from, is that Rebecca is the ex-wife of Max, and she used to kind of run Manderley. She ran the day-to-day. Max didn't really fool with it. She ran day-to-day. She was the one that threw all these extravagant parties, and so everyone that comes in contact with Mrs. De Winter is just like, oh, do you think we'll have more parties? Do you think you'll throw parties again? Oh, you're nothing like Rebecca. Oh, I remember Rebecca. Oh, Rebecca used to do this. Oh, Rebecca was so pretty. Oh, Rebecca just did it like this. And it's just like, oh my gosh, what has this woman walked into? I mean, even from the staff, she's like, I would like to have my coffee or my tea in this room. And the Diet Carson.
A telephone is not a toy, but a useful and valuable tool.
The butler Frith, I think his name is, he's like, well, Mrs. De Winter always used to take it in this other room. And she just needs to be like, I'm taking my coffee in here, right here, not in that other room. Like, give me a coffee here. Like, I'm the boss. But she is just so weighted down with the oppressive specter of Rebecca, who's not even there. And this is where the large conflict comes in. This is where the main plot of the book comes in. Because Mrs. De Winter is just, she is not bold enough to know her role really there. She is just crushed beneath the oppressive memory of Max's ex-wife when dealing with Max and dealing with Mrs. Danvers and dealing really with anything with Max's sister or her sister-in-law. And so I didn't know what to expect going into this book. Is it like, it's a kind of a gothic thriller. And if you know anything about gothic stories, they are slow burns, and this indeed is. For the first 200 pages, nothing really happens. It takes much longer to get to Manderley than I initially thought it was going to, but once we're there, it's just this slow build, the slow build of suspense, the slow build of dread. What happened to Rebecca? Where is we know that she's dead, but what's going on? Is she haunting the place? Like, was there some kind of like suspicious circumstances surrounding her death? Like, why is everyone obsessed with her? Is there something different that was going on with her? And that's the mystery. But it's just this slow piling on of dread to where every page you just feel just like our heroine weighted down even more with just this tension of who the freak was Rebecca? Like, who is Rebecca? Like, what is her deal? And why is everyone so freaking obsessed with her? And it's just a constant build, a constant pressure that you're just anxious, even turning the pages. And the way Du Maurier writes, and this is a credit to her writing style, this writing style is extremely descriptive. We are told this whole story from the perspective of Mrs. De Winter's head. So, is she an unreliable narrator? Is she telling us things that are true? Or are we just seeing it from her kind of jaded or skewed view of events? And so that really lends to that tension and lends to that mystery. And she's very, very descriptive, very sensory in the things that she sees and hears and feels and tastes and smells. We get all 5 senses working here with all of the description of Manderley and its vastness and of her feelings and of just kind of the way or seeing things out of a glance, like, oh, there's Mrs. Danvers, the housekeeper, at the end of a hallway just staring at her. Like, this woman is crazy. She's so creepy, y'all. So creepy, Miss Danvers, not Mrs. De Winter. And so that is a really impressive testament to Du Maurier in the fact that this definitely feels classic and it definitely feels gothic, but it does not feel bogged down. Her writing is beautiful and flowing while having that classic feel. It's not, say, stupid Dickens, where it's just clunky and unwieldy and wordy for the sake of being wordy, but it's very descriptive, very evocative. At times, it's even too much. Mrs. De Winter is constantly fantasizing in her head where, oh, if this happens, oh, then this happens, oh, then this would happen. And we get off on these huge tangents that have led us like years down the road because of the series of events that hasn't happened, but that she's imagining in her head. And it struck me very, very similar. If you've ever seen the show Scrubs, of JD from the show, whenever he's like,
sometimes I worry what you'll be like as a dad.
Yeah, baby, we're on our way back right now. Junior and I just went to pick up a pumpkin. I'm gonna have to call you back.
Look, somebody left a baby here.
Well, he is kind of cute.
Our baby's first bath.
Oh, watch the head. Intentional!
Charge him out, son! Charge him out! You're so damn proud of you, son.
My little valedictorian. Ah!
Put him back together, baby. No! Mom? Dad?
Son? Son?
Get over here, boy! You come in, you give your father a hug! Dude, you all right? You're gone for a really long time.
You're gonna be an awful father.
and is picturing something, and there's just this long series of daydreams or fantasies or whatever. It felt really like that at several moments. So we know that something weird's going on. Max is acting weird, and Mrs. Danvers is acting weird, and we meet some other, like this guy named Jack that shows up at the house, and he's weird, and there's this weird kid who takes care of things down at the boathouse, and he's kind of not all there mentally, and so all of these things are just building, and we're like, what is going on? And you have all these theories, and then finally it culminates, and we figure out what is going on, and a lot of the mystery, the veil is pulled back on the mystery, and there's the reveal. And the reveal, I'm just like, what? And it was so good, and it was satisfying, and I mean, I don't really see things coming in books, so I didn't see it coming. I know some other people had. I was on the live show for the Top Shelf Society when we were talking about this, and I know that some of them saw what was coming when it was coming. I did not, and I was just like, what? But then I realized that after the reveal, there's still a lot of book left. And so then we're dealing with the resolution of the reveal. And it's at that point that I just wasn't quite as interested. I thought it was super obvious where it was gonna go from the reveal, like how the whole thing was gonna get resolved. And it just felt very much like a procedural. At that point where it's like, oh, well, we gotta go here and figure this thing out over here, and then we gotta go over there and figure this thing out over there, and oh, look at this on the ground. And I'm like, oh, well, this is definitely gonna end up here, and this explains why she's not at Manderley anymore. And then I was not right. It went somewhere different than I thought for sure it was gonna end in this specific place, and it did not. It ended somewhere else. And so that kind of saved it, but where it went, I didn't really like that either. So it was kind of lose-lose for the end. I actually wish that it had ended much quicker after the reveal. I thought the reveal was excellent, and it ends extremely abruptly. And you're like, wait, hold on, that's the last of it? Is there more? Oh, look, I've got an epilogue. Wait, no, that's not really there. What? That's the end? And it just ends super abruptly. And you're like, oh, I guess, okay. I guess. And so the last leg of this book I was not the biggest fan of, but I really enjoyed the way that Du Maurier told this story, at least up to the reveal, and I like her writing style, especially for a classic. Like, these characters are just really well drawn, especially seen from the point of Mrs. De Winter. Like, Mrs. Danvers is so freaking creepy, and then the douchebaggery that is this Jack character, and then Max, what's going on with him, and It is all very, very, very interesting. And despite all that, despite the fact that I didn't really love the way it wrapped up, I think this book has a lot to say about kind of the masks that we wear to kind of protect ourselves, and that sometimes horrible truths, no matter how like hard they are to talk about or whatever, can kind of bring us together and make us closer while trying to protect ourselves, and keeping secrets is what divides us and what separates us and what kind of pits us against each other. And how often do we put up masks to try to protect our feelings rather than just like being who we are and letting people see who we are and being vulnerable and trying to actually communicate and interact with other people on a human level, rather than this kind of manufactured persona that we put up for ourselves. And so I really did love that kind of exploration of the different people that we pretend to be. I think we can also all feel for Mrs. De Winter in the fact that everyone is talking about Rebecca all the time. And if you've ever dated someone whose family or the people around them was really, really fond of their ex, and you're around them and they're constantly being like, oh, so-and-so's ex was just, we thought they were going to get married and we just loved them. If you've ever been in that situation, like, we all know how that feels. Or even at a job where like, well, you know, the last person that had your job did this and this. Or even if you're school age and you had a brother or a sister that graduated before you, and all the teachers are like, well, you're not the same as, you know, your brother was really good at this. I have that right now in my classes. I deal with that all the time, where the younger generation comes and is either better or worse than their siblings that passed through my classroom beforehand. And you can't really help it. You just compare. That's just what humans do. And so there's that really relatable quality about this as well. So just because it's a classic and just because it's an old book doesn't mean that there's not still things that we can relate to, despite the fact that this is set on a, you know, noble estate. And so I really enjoyed my foray into gothic thriller and this dance with a classic that I normally would not have picked up if not for the Top Shelf Society. So I give these ladies tremendous thanks for inviting me on into their club, onto their show, so that I would have had a reason to pick this up, because otherwise I never would have. Now, since then, I've actually bought My Cousin Rachel, which is another novel by Du Maurier that I hope to read next year in 2021, because Du Maurier is one of my favorite classic authors at this point. So I strongly recommend, if you have not read any Du Maurier, definitely pick up Rebecca. It is exciting. Well, it's exciting in the build, in just like the tension and feeling tense on every page. It is not exciting in things that happen. If you've ever seen Downton Abbey, it's exactly that exciting. Nothing happens, and yet you're like, oh my gosh, who's gonna win the flower competition? Are they going to be able to support the Abbey? Are they going to have to sell off part of the land? Nothing's happening, and yet you're just glued to it. You must needs see, you know, what's going on downstairs, and if Daisy's gonna learn how to read, and all this other stuff. So it's exactly that interesting. If you found Downton Abbey interesting, and if you like thrillers, you will love this book. If one of those two you do not like, you might still like this book. I think if you like Downton Abbey, you'll actually absolutely like this, whether you like thrillers or not. I think if you like Downton Abbey, you'll love this book. On the Kingfin approval system, I'm going to give this book, I'm going to give her an excellent minus. I really enjoyed this. Not to throw into the upper echelon because of that last leg. I wasn't really feeling it, but an excellent minus for sure. And out of 5 stars, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I don't think it was quite enough for me to push it to 4 stars, especially considering how much I've enjoyed some of the other 4-star books that I've given this year, but 3.5 stars solid, and you absolutely should go out and read it. If you've read Rebecca, did you enjoy it? How do you feel about the way kind of it wrapped up? Have you read any other of Du Maurier's works? And if you have, let me know which ones are the best that I should read. Is My Cousin Rachel the next one I should read, or should I pick up another one, a different one of them? Guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, information about my Patreon and Discord are in the description, and I will see you guys next time.